Esto no se ve, ¿verdad? Solamente se escucha.
No, you can, no, they were both, it's both live and, hold on. It's both
Ok,
live and they can see you via video. So
ok.
hold on. We're going to start recording. Welcome back. Welcome back to Living in Mexico. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a very busy week for the world commerce. If you do follow those, if you do follow the news, and of course, world commerce, particularly world commerce and the decisions being made by Donald Trump and his trade war, not only have an impact on Mexico and impact on the United States, but the rest of the world. It was an important week, and some think that this may be the week we're going to remember in the history books. I'm not sure that Donald Trump could change his mind on many things, but at least listening to many analysts, this first week in August is considering to be historical in the sense of Donald Trump, as of this Thursday, 2 minutes after midnight, this new tariff regime has initiated. It officially took effect, making it one of the most aggressive policy moves by the US government in modern history. Over 90 countries are now facing import taxes that are ranging from 10% to an incredible 50% of taxes to products that they export to the United States. And some of the hardest hits are, in many ways, allies of the United States, but also important commerce allies to the United States. The hardest hit has been India, Brazil, Switzerland, and Canada. Now, in the case of India, it's interesting, and it's kind of a sign of what these tariffs mean for Donald Trump. The tariffs of 50% has to do more with the fact that India is purchasing petroleum from Russia. And as you know, those who follow international affairs, Donald Trump has been trying to push Vladimir Putin to the negotiation table, at least for a ceasefire with Ukraine. And whether the fact that he is imposing 50% tariffs on India, so India will stop purchasing oil. Well, we still don't know what the effect is going to be and whether it's going to help this objective of Donald Trump. But the fact is, 50% is a lot. Also, Brazil faces similar penalties, but for another reason. It has to do with the way this is according to Donald Trump, they are treating the former president of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, who, as you know, is facing a trial in his country for basically promoting a coup d'etat. And Donald Trump thinks that this is unfair and that he shouldn't be treated this way. So he is imposing this tariffs on Brazil of 50%. So even allies like Switzerland and South Korea have also are suffering this tariff from this tariff war. In the case, for example, of Switzerland, they are going to be they're facing 39% tariffs, and Korea, who I believe the United States has a commerce agreement, is facing 15. A free trade agreement is facing 15%. So what does this mean for Mexico? And Canada is, as you know, one of Mexico's partners in the USMCA, is also facing extremely also high tariffs. And Canada, which I think it has taken another strategy, is basically ready to impose tariffs on imports from the United States to Canada. So it's kind of like a mixed bag, but let's just focus today on what this means for Mexico. That's why I really appreciate today's guest. He's joined us before, Jorge Molina. He is an expert on international commerce and trade agreements. And you and I have been following this process closely, and I've had the opportunity to talk to you at different points for my different TV shows and radio show. So Jorge, just give us an initial assessment as to what is the impact on Mexico of this tariff wars and the fact that it's supposed to start this week, at least That was the announcement from the White House. Welcome to the show.
Well, first of all, Ana Maria, thanks for the invitation as usual. What does it mean for Mexico? Well, basically that with a 90-day delay that it was announced actually last week until October the 30th, when they will decide whether to raise this fentanyl tariff from 25 to 30%. It means that the Mexican government has basically 90 days to provide results in terms of how serious the Sheinbaum government is regarding its fight against the narcos and the drug cartels and all of these bad guys who have been providing the fentanyl to the United States. Because even though that Trump has argued that the tariff on Mexico and Canada both are based because of fentanyl traffic. Data shows that the situation is absolutely different between one country and the other. For example, if we look at 1923 and 1924, there were less than 28 kilos who were caught on the border between the US and Canada, while at the same time, more than 28 tons were caught in the border between Mexico and the United States during those 2 years. Now, even though that in the July 11th letter to both Carney and Sheinbaum, Trump says that neither country has done enough in order to stop fentanyl, the Customs Border Protection data for the first 6 months of the year show a decrease of 55% of the fentanyl that has been caught compared with the first 6 months of last year. So yes, I mean, a lot has been done, but basically what you are saying it's that here Trump is using the threat of the tariff both as a source of pressure, both as a source of negotiation, both with Mexico and Canada facing now the upcoming renegotiation of the USMCA, and also as a new way of let's say, sanctions against other countries like Brazil or India or other countries. Because, for example, in the case of Brazil, the United States has the sixth largest surplus in trade of all 232 countries that the United States has trade relations. While in the case of Mexico, it's the second largest deficit. Canada is on number 10 and India is on number 9. So the use of these tariffs are being now used for very different purposes, not all of them, not particularly for economic reasons, but basically for political reasons. And now that everyone has a tariff, now it becomes a matter of how are you going to reorganize your industry?
But even let's just talk very briefly about what's happening in the United States. I spoke to an economist, a US economist this week, and he basically laid out, that the economy, the US economy is not reflecting the pain that we all assumed that these tariff would impose on the US purchasing power and on inflation. I mean, that there continues to be a certain level of trust by consumers, and that the stock markets, although there's a lot of instability, they continue to fall and grow, and it hasn't really hit the American pockets yet in the ways that we thought it would when this war started. So can we assume that as of this week, this is where the US economy and US consumers are going to start feeling the pain?
Yes, for one major reason. That if you remember, after the so-called Liberation Day in early April, Trump gave a 90-day postponement on the date of entry for all of these tariffs. So there were 3 months in which the tariffs were supposed to be on, but they were not charged. Therefore,
Right.
there were not effects. There were no price effects, except for certain products like cars and other products. For example, those made of steel and aluminum, where these 50% tariff have been in effect since April, and also with a new copper tariff, also of 50%, that started last month. So basically now it's when the consumers are really going to start looking at the effects of all of these tariffs, because those who were mostly affected were basically those companies, or regardless of their size, who were importing from China, who remains the largest, the country that has been hit with the largest tariffs. Besides that, now that the consumers are really going to start to realize the effect on the prices of all of these tariffs.
So just help us understand, what is the direct impact on Mexico and and the commerce between U.S. and Mexico? There is the fentanyl tariff, which is a very strange tariff, and it has to do, like you said, with pushing Mexico to go after these criminal organizations that are trafficking fentanyl into the United States. But that, I believe, is 25%. But that doesn't affect all products, correct? I mean, just lay out what is being taxed. What are these tariffs? Which products are they affecting?
The 25% is levied on any product that does not comply with the so-called rule of origin of the USMCA. That's basically the bottom line. In other words, if a product that comes from Mexico does not fulfill the rule of origin, for example, in the case of a car, where the domestic content, the percentage of pieces that have to be produced in either Mexico, the US, or Canada are less than 75%, then the usual tariff was charged before Donald Trump, which at a time it was around, for example, in the case of cars, it was also like 30%. But now, with or what it was used to be known as the most favored nation tariff, which was the tariff that the United States would charge any country importing into the US without a free trade agreement. Now, with Trump, what he is saying is that if a product coming from Mexico does not fulfill the rule of origin, then the 25% tariff is going to be applied.
So that's basically mainly for cars, I believe, right? What, I mean, what percentage of the exports Mexico sends to the United States fall under that category?
Okay, let's put it in this way. According to INEGI, 83% of all Mexican exports go to the United States. Of that 83%, 26 points of those 83 are accounted by auto exports. Right. So that gives you an idea of how important is the auto industry, both for Mexico and for its exporting industries. Now, the other thing is that 83% of all exports from Mexico go to the US, but according to the data of Customs Border Protection, and I have it right here in front of me, a little bit less than 49%, fulfills the rule of origin. That means that about 51% of those exports going from Mexico to the United States are now subject to that 25% tariff based on fentanyl. And that's separate from the 50% tariff for aluminum, copper, and steel products, and also for automobile exports, which are subject to this other 25% rate.
Wow. So
and don't let me forget the 17% for tomatoes.
70, of course, which is not necessarily part of this. I mean, that was a dispute that was before.
Yes, it's what it's called. It's what it's called an anti-dumping compensation.
But does that mean, is it 17%? Is it 25% plus the 50% for copper? You know what I mean? What does this mean in terms of what does this look like?
Well, that was Trump had to issue. Trump had to issue a correction on that because that's what it's called stacking. And and certainly the way that the executive orders were written originally, they meant that it was one plus the other plus the other. No, now basically what it means is that if a car is subject only to the 25% tariff rate because of the automobile, but products which are made of copper, aluminum, or steel, they are subject to a tariff of 50%.
Wow. Joining us today is Jorge Molina Larrondo. He's been joining us for quite a few shows now, trying to help us understand this trade war between Mexico and the United States, or the United States and the rest of the world. There is also a statement was made that there had to be a renegotiation of the USMCA, or they were pushing for the renegotiation of the USMCA, I believe, for this year. Is that right? I mean, what is the status then of the USMCA in a world where, you know, pretty much the USMCA has no value, or at least it appears that it's being violated, and it's being, in part, it's being violated because I guess there's assumption that there's going to be renegotiations. What is the status of the USMCA?
The USMCA is still in place, and basically what all three countries have to do on July the 1st of 2026 is make a statement, a written statement, saying whether they would like to continue as a party of the agreement or not. That's what the agreement says right now. But given what has happened basically in Mexico and in Canada, what we are looking at, it's a renegotiation of the agreement.
Right.
And I say both in Mexico and the US, it's because the judicial reform, which was approved last year in our country, as well as the elimination of a number of regulatory agencies, which were part of the text itself, that creates a number of problems, both for the dispute settlement mechanism of the agreement, as well as for 6 or 7 other chapters of the agreement. Plus, the U.S. wants to add new chapters on China, on artificial intelligence, on making stricter certain rules of origin, particularly for the auto sector. So all of that leads you to a renegotiation of the agreement. Now, in order to do that, you basically have to, if you are the U.S., you have to follow what it's called the Trade Promotion Authority process, where the USTR and Congress had to agree on both timing, objectives, and a number of other things. And for that, it means that this is a law that has to be approved about 4 or 5 months before the first formal negotiation meeting. Otherwise, you cannot do that. So if there's going to be a renegotiation or any formal meeting where Congress is certainly going to have to be included, then all three countries have to announce what's going to be the process that is going to be followed. Ebrard is saying that in September or October, the consultations will start with the private sector. That's something in Canada has already started since last year, and these conversations have already started since last year among the U.S. agencies that will participate in the process. So having said that, basically what we are looking at is at a fall and winter, which will be extremely, extremely busy, where I hope the Mexican government will include all of the private sector, because all of the
Yeah.
industry is going to be affected, and that it will not try to keep involved only the largest companies.
Which is what kind of what happened the last time around. I mean, it was the USMCA as a negotiation tool. Well, Mexico's negotiation tool had what they call el cuarto adjunto, which had the representation of many of these the major companies in Mexico. One last question: do you think that there is any possibility of Trump backing off on these tariffs this time around?
Well,
Again.
the thing is that it will depend on what kind of breakfast he has that day. Because as long as he's arguing, or as long as he is using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act as the support for all of these tariffs, he's keeping Congress out of the picture, and he can actually change his mind literally overnight. So he can do it in terms of increasing or decreasing the tariff rate. That's why Canada has been pushing in order to try to reduce it as much as possible, so that by the time the renegotiation of the USMCA starts, then we will have a level playing field, because it's very different that we will start with, let's say, a 25 or 15 or even a 10% general tariff instead of a zero tariff, when everything is going to be on the table. Different from what is happening now, because right now, all that the US is putting on the table is a tariff rate. And in exchange, they want for the rest of the world to change all of the things that we are reading on the newspaper.
Right. Fascinating. Well, we're clearly following this very closely. The impact, I know I said that was the last question, but I'm literally running out of time. The impact on Mexico's economy, when are we going to feel it?
Well, we see that the foreign direct investment has been
It's gone down.
pretty flat. That's one thing, because there is a whole bunch of uncertainty on what may happen in the future. The GDP has been growing under 1%.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that those two indicators are enough to tell you that about 80% of Mexico's GDP is somehow related or dependent on international trade.
Jorge Molina Larrondo, thank you so much for joining us here once again on Living in Mexico.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. We're going to go to a break. I'm Ana Maria